What's up, everybody? One of the key aspects to our success in self-storage is increasing self-storage revenue. It's not just about buying and holding. It's about actively operating and managing those assets. Remember, we think of self-storage as a business, not an investment. We want to be actively engaged in improving the revenue because self-storage is commercial real estate. You improve the revenue, you improve value. So, self-storage is a very unique asset class, and it is one that has more revenue increasing potential than I think any other asset class does. It's why we love it. It's why we've been so successful in it. It is meaningful and it is fast. It's one of the reasons why it's also a hedge against inflation because of the lease structure. In self-storage, we have month-to-month leases. We also have churn, people coming and going. I often say it acts a little more like retail than it does a traditional lease up and walk away asset class. This is where that opportunity lies, and this is why we can increase revenue so quickly and by so much. When we're going to buy a self-storage facility, there's lots of things that we look at, and there's lots of aspects about the asset, how consistent the revenue is, occupancy, location, what it's offering. But one of our main focus area that we're looking at is revenue potential, meaning what's the revenue at currently and what can it be? The more the revenue potential there is, the more opportunity that there is for us to make money. It's important. And there's a few dead giveaways that we look for. The first thing we look at is, are they doing static pricing? So our first way to improve revenue is to not do static pricing. There's a few names for this, okay? We call it dynamic pricing or revenue management, but dynamic pricing is what things like airlines and hotels use, where they're monitoring market conditions and their current availability, and they're trying to price demand and get the highest price for that seat or that room they can. But they also don't want seats and rooms empty because then you're missing money on a month to month. So you want it full. This is a balancing act that storage facilities should always be looking at. You're either leaving money on the table or you're losing money because you're not pricing them correctly. Revenue management and dynamic pricing can be as simple or as technical and in-depth as you want it. Let's say that we have a certain size unit. Let's call it a 10 by 10. And all the 10 by 10s, let's say there's 100 of them, are $100 a piece. A lot of storage units price the actual unit based upon what it is. So if it's a 10 by 10, it's $100. That is not how we price units. We price units based upon demand, and they're also priced individually. They're not all the same. Not all 10 by 10s are $100. Every individual unit has its own price and its own supply and demand factors. As those 10 by 10s fill up, demand gets higher. As vacancy comes in, demand gets lower. Are we going to offer a special? What kind of rate increase schedule are those guys on? All of those things really depend individually on current market conditions and the individual self-storage conditions. How much available do we have? What are the pricing of our other units? How much availability is in the market? What are the pricing of those units? That's how we determine pricing. It's supply and demand. We don't want to leave money on the table, but we also don't want to be so out of line that nobody's coming and renting for us. Therefore, the asset is losing money. Therefore, prices are always changing. It's also an effect of seasonality. Now, although we have a super high-end software system that helps us and plus on the ground, it was never like that before, and that's only more recent. Really, it's as simple as using a spreadsheet with all your units, the pricing in the marketplace. So you go out and you secret shop. You look at the pricing, you look at your facility, what's available on the marketplace, what the pricing is, what you have available, and how much you can charge for those units. Every market is different. Every storage facility is different. Sometimes storage facilities have units that aren't available in the rest of the market. Maybe that's climate controlled. Those should be priced very differently than other units in your facility, and it should not be the same rent per square foot. It's not the same. Number 2, adding lines of revenue. We can change the pricing structure of the actual units, but we can also change what's being offered. We do this in the form of things like insurance, boxes, sales. There's other things that we can do within that facility to add on additional lines of revenue. There's a lot of things you can do with that facility to add products, lines, or services that will increase the revenue very quickly. You can turn it on and use it day one. Let's use U-Haul as an example. A lot of storage operators will actually rent out U-Hauls at their facility, and they get to split that cost of that rental, therefore adding a totally new line of revenue that didn't exist before. Boxes, crates, packaging materials, packaging services. There's a lot of things that you can do. Insurance for tenants is a key one. And 2, we get a healthy return of that insurance premium back. And generally speaking, that can add up to 10, 15% of gross revenue. You can really build that up to be an important revenue source. So I've worked with YouTube, and YouTube will not release the third main way to increase revenue on a self-storage facility unless you like and subscribe. So do it now. And last but certainly not least, rate increases. I left that for the last one, and I didn't include it in revenue management, and it's important why. Revenue management is the overall pricing of the units. Rate increases are once you have a tenant in at a given price, how you handle and manage that tenant. Rate increases, like revenue management, depends a lot on market conditions, but not nearly as much. So what this means is, first, individual based, okay? If someone moves in, every single facility, they're getting a rate increase every 6 to 12 months. Regardless, depending on conditions in our facility and the market, may mean whether we go a 5% increase or a 15% increase. That will depend on demand. But they all get rate increases. Because it's individually based and people move in on different months, what happens is we have ongoing rate increases. Every single month, different people at different storage facilities are getting revenue increases. It's an organic way that naturally increases our revenue. If someone moves out, we replace them, and hopefully and usually at a higher street price. So our pricing on that revenue management is up here. We don't ever want there to be a spread in the rates charged for existing. This is occupancy and economic occupancy. So they may be 100% full, but they're charging $100 for all their 10 by 10s, but not everybody's actually getting $100 because a lot of people moved in at a $50 price, and although street rate went up, they never gave rate increases. So now your average rental rate is actually $50 even though you can sell it at $100. That's a lot of money being left on the table. That's the difference between occupancy and economic occupancy. Rate increases should always be adjusting. Individualized rate increases, everyone gets them all the time. Third, rate increases depend on demand at the facility and in the overall market. So not only are they individualized in timing, but also the amounts that they give. When you're in the early parts of summer and spring and there's way more demand, you can give much higher rental rate increases than in a time that's slow. And if somebody moves out, it's harder to fill it up. Don't lease up and walk away. And the storage facilities that do have standardized pricing, have a lease up and kind of walk away model where they want it on cruise control, those are our acquisition targets because we make so much money off of them. So those are the top ways that we increase revenues at our storage facility and how you can do it too. To understand more about self-storage and inflation, check out this video. We went in depth on inflation and self-storage. Like and subscribe. Make sure you guys follow along on our podcast and my other YouTube channel, AJ Osborne.